Hello and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. I'm your host, the Nerd Man, and today we're doing part two of, we're reacting to part two of Chris Terrio, the writer of Batman v Superman and Justice League's article. Basically, it's an expose on what happened on the set of Justice League. So I'm going to continue here from where I left off. If you want to see part one, I will leave it in the description, or just check amongst my video library if you are watching live. So the last question was, what did Ben Affleck want you to do? My job was to create a story and tone. Yeah, okay, so we got past that. Right. So what did you want to avoid? So let me read from the last one, because it was a natural place to kind of leave off from. So what was your approach? I came into it thinking the only thing the only way that this could work was as a fever dream or a revenge tragedy. I thought, how do we create a story in which Bruce Wayne is traumatized by the war of Krypton coming to Earth, and in which he enters into this kind of madness? He becomes Captain Ahab, and he won't listen to saner voices like Alfred, for example. You are telling him that this is just not worth it. Telling him to just see reason. He's a man possessed. So the film was dark by its nature. As I worked on this movie, it seemed to me that it was a snapshot of what I was feeling on the ground in the country, which maybe didn't become apparent until this madness and division that came about from the last presidency. I thought this superhero movie could be about getting into our worst natures, but then coming out of that into redemption. And, you know, I think that's an interesting storyline. But again, the problem with this film, you know, I loved elements of it. Batman action, the Batman James Bond stuff, the Wonder Woman Batman interactions, the Trinity at the end of the movie. But the central conflict of Batman versus Superman itself didn't gel and didn't make sense, and it didn't work. I didn't know why Batman wanted to fight Superman. I didn't know why Superman wanted to fight Batman. Really, I mean, it didn't make sense unless you think about it on a very, very cursory, instinctual level, that he sees Superman as just this alien, even though he's an alien that clearly saved the world, and Bruce Wayne is aware that he saved the world, and potentially that this alien is the only protection the Earth has against other similarly powerful aliens that might come to the world. So wouldn't you want to at least at first talk to Superman, or try and understand, or do some detective work to figure out who this guy is? Maybe where does he live? Where does he rest his cape? You know, you'd think that Batman would be wanting to find out as much about him as possible. You know, are there more people like Superman? Could there potentially be a risk of the Earth being invaded? Would he be our only way of, you know, potentially defending the Earth? But Batman is just like a rabid wolf or whatever, trying to go after Superman, and it doesn't seem very Batman. So I don't understand why Batman is going after Superman. And in the same sense, Superman, it really doesn't make sense, right? I mean, he should be going after him because Batman's a killer, and or because Batman. I don't think Batman should have been a killer in the film. I think he should have been coming close to that. But Superman's coming after Batman because Batman's a killer, but Superman's a killer. Superman kills a terrorist in the beginning of the movie. Superman's brutal to his enemies as well. So all of it just didn't hang together and didn't make sense. So I do get the like elements of what he was doing in the screenplay came through in what Zack Snyder did finally. But I think either his ideas were not presented properly on screen by Zack Snyder, or you know, he wrote some things that didn't quite come through in the way that he imagined they were. You know, in the sense the conflict, the division, this hatred of aliens needed to be a little bit more nuanced than it was in the movie. You never really got to find out why anyone specifically hates Superman. Are there a conspiracy people who believe, like, you know, you never got to spend any personal time with anyone who hated Superman apart from people who hated him for saving the world, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, could you imagine, you know, there's that guy who's got no legs or whatever, like in the film, and basically his legs have been cut off, or his legs are damaged because he was in this fight. He was in the city when Metropolis was like destroyed, and he's complaining, you know, and he hates Superman. And you kind of think about it, and you're just like, actually, really, why does this guy hate Superman? I know his legs are jacked up or whatever because of this conflict, but could you imagine somebody who's, you know, who was in a fire or something, and a fireman saves them from this fire, but they come out and they're crippled a little bit? Do you think that person would really hate the fireman? Because maybe I'm wrong or something. Maybe I don't understand shit properly. But I doubt people, you know, so like, you know, there's a fire, and I don't know, something heavy falls on my legs, and I can never walk again. But a fireman comes in, risks his life through the fire, and drags me out. Am I gonna hate him for what happened to my legs? I mean, I don't really get that kind of thinking. The man knows that Superman saved him. So there were just story elements that where even the thing that he was trying to show of the tension in the country and how they hated Superman doesn't quite work or hang together. You'd think that there would be a little bit more nuance, or we could follow a couple of these characters who hate Superman and really see what they're doing. Are they forming kind of groups like MAGA, you know, like a MAGA group? They have like a hat, like no alien, what can we call it? No aliens, like NAGA or something. I don't know. Some an acronym or something where it's about these, you know, hillbillies or something who hate Superman just because, you know, he's an alien and they don't trust him. But and they're rational, and you could show that. And then you could show back, you know, it's just not as sophisticated as he's suggesting. So what did you want to avoid? I didn't want to make it a sitcom joke that Batman and Superman are trying to kill each other. You see, this is what I'm talking about. Why would Batman and Superman try and kill each other? And I know he inherited that from the first writer, but again, I'm not feeling his complaints against Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, everybody who took this approach to Batman and Superman were wrong. This is coming from somebody who likes the movie. I like the movie, but this approach to Batman and Superman was fundamentally wrong. And they must have known, somebody must have known, if they knew comic books, specifically Zack Snyder, that this was going to piss people off. They saw that people were pissed off with Man of Steel and how it treated Superman. Of course, they're going to be pissed off if you do this kind of, you know, thing with BvS. Movie Logic says main terrorist walked away without a scratch. You say movie Logic says main terror. Can you explain that a bit? I don't quite understand what you mean there. I need to understand that a little bit more so I can respond to that. Okay, cool, good. You can hear me well? All right. So that's what did you try to avoid? How did things develop from there? I wrote drafts of the Batman Superman movie, which wasn't called Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice by me. I did not name the script. In fact, I found out that the movie was called along with the rest of the world on the internet. In fact, I found out what the movie was called along with the rest of the world on the internet. I was not consulted on the title of the film, and I was as surprised as everyone. I would not have named it Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. Was that Zach's choice? I don't know exactly who named it. Okay, so at least he admits he doesn't know, but he basically threw his own friend under the bus. But I suspect it was the studio, and I suspect it was marketing. To be honest with you, it might have been the first step. No, my friend, it was Zack Snyder. It might have been the first step towards creating ill will for the film. I suspect that putting the words Batman and Superman into the title had some marketing component to it. I think you're right that the title did rub people the wrong way. I heard it. No, everyone was doing, I remember at the time, everyone was doing backflips, dancing in the street. I was the only one saying that is a stupid name and it's a stupid concept for a second Batman v second movie in a universe, but they should do a Superman sequel, that they should get Wonder Woman and Flash out there as solo movies, and then go on to do a Justice League movie. I was one of the only people saying that on the internet. Everyone else was doing backflips and dancing in the street when they heard about Batman v Superman. And anyone who tells you any different is a fucking liar. There was so many people who were up for this idea, who were like, "Oh, Dark Knight Returns, it's going to be amazing." I'm like, yeah, but the Dark Knight Returns is way in the future, and it's a build up of many years of their conflict. But anyway, who cares? So I was right, people were wrong, but yeah, the name was stupid. So I think you're right that it did rub people the wrong way. I heard and I thought it sounds self-important and clueless in a way, tone deaf. The intention of the film was to do something interesting and dark and complex, not quite as Las Vegas bust 'em up WWE matches, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. It's kind of fucking weird, because you're right. He's right in a way, because I think it attracted the wrong type of people to the movie who really did just want to see a long Batman v Superman fight. But that being said, the movie isn't so complicated as he's trying to make out. I think there's something very basic about Batman v Superman. Because of the story itself, it collapses under the weight of its own concept, really. But at the same time, I just really enjoy the seriousness with it. Look, put it this way. I think it's about as complex as a really good DC animated movie. Like, they're not very complex, but they're well written, they're sophisticated, they take themselves a bit seriously, they're not like MCU childish bullshit. But I wouldn't say there's a great deal that complicated about BvS, really. There's some philosophical things that are thrown in there that are interesting to think about, especially from Lex Luthor. But all in all, it's less sophisticated than he thinks. And my problem is, I think it should have been more sophisticated and more interested, and really played on the dynamics of what's going on in the world at the moment, as he was saying. Let's see people, like riots. Let's see people protesting. Let's see Superman do some impact in the world that is actually important to what's going on in the world at the moment, in America and in Europe. Some kind of conflict where he goes into it and actually, people, I don't know, that like people are actually literally protesting against him and hating him, and he wants to come and speak to them or something. But anyway, the movie wasn't great. It wasn't like Watchmen. Watchmen was a much more complicated movie. It wasn't called Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice by me. All right. So how did you feel about this version of BvS that was first released? I was proud of the script when I completed it, but it turns out that when you remove 30 minutes that give the characters motivation for the climax, they didn't give any motivation for the characters. I'm sorry. Your 30 minutes did not add motivation. It added Superman on a boat, like just walking around in silence, and them claiming Superman's brutal and all of these kind of things. But so's claiming Batman is brutal. Like Superman, Clark Kent goes into the flat, and sees some old man, and he's like, yeah, he's angry and he is hunting and he's talking about Batman, and you're like, yeah, okay, I get it. You're saying Batman's really brutal and he's killing people, but like Superman, didn't I see you kill somebody in the beginning of this movie? So you don't really have a reason to be angry at Batman right now, bruh. You really don't. And Batman, aren't you just murdering people needlessly in the streets? People who aren't even like, I don't even know if that they were literally transporting kryptonite, which is probably like one of the least offensive crimes you could possibly do. And certainly you don't deserve execution for it. This Batman in this universe should be in the prison. He's a fucking serial killer. He should be in prison in the DCU. There's no way Superman should be working with the Batman in this universe. At least Superman killed a terrorist. Batman was out there just killing fucking people who were transporting material from one place to another. It didn't work. The whole conflict of the story was the worst part of the story. So no, 30 minutes didn't add shit, bro. The character's motivation for the climax. The film just doesn't work. As we learned from the two versions of Justice League, you can skip on the character and think the audience will give a shit about the VFX. That stuff was later restored in the extended version. I guess it's called the Ultimate Edition, remastered and released on HBO Max this March. So this house of cards that had been built in order to motivate this clash between America's two favorite heroes made no sense at all. That was what happened with Batman Superman. No, what happened with Batman Superman is you should have never made a Batman vs Superman movie in the first place. You did it about as good as you could possibly do it. So I'll give you, some applause for that. I don't think you could do a much better version, of that movie other than actually putting Superman in the movie. But it will be very hard to explain why a good, hopeful, nice, intelligent, Superman would actually ever fight or try and kill Batman. So that would be the problem you would have. You would have to turn Superman evil again or something like that, like somebody mind controls Superman. That's the only way you could do a Batman v Superman movie where you have Superman being the nice guy that he is. And you even see that a little bit in Batman v Superman, because Superman really isn't trying to fight Batman in that movie. What happens when Superman fights Batman is what happened in Justice League. That's what would really happen if Superman was like going all out. Like he never tried to laser Batman with his eyes during the whole fight. He never used his freeze breath. He never used any of his fucking powers until it was too late, and Batman had just basically got him with the kryptonite. So again, the whole concept of it needed a much, much better architecture, and the only way Batman can believably take on Superman is with years of prep and watching him and finding out about his weaknesses, and not artificially coming across kryptonite, having built weapons, having built an arsenal, having access to red sun radiation or something like that, or magic. I don't know. All the things Batman would need to face Superman was not there in this movie. They had to go the boring route. Oh, he gives him kryptonite, which basically makes him a human, so then he can face him. But if we want to see Batman v Superman, we want Superman using his full powers against Batman, and Batman coming up with a strategy to work his way around that. And that did not happen. So the movie was trash. The movie was always going to be dark. This house of cards had been built in order to motivate this clash between America's two favorite heroes. Made no sense at all. That was what happened with Batman Superman. The movie was always going to be dark. There were always going to be people who just didn't want to see that version of a comic book world, and I get that. But what hurt was the criticism that the script was not coherent, because when I turned in the script to the studio, which they, by all accounts, were happy with, it made sense. I can believe that, but like, again, you know, I think whatever you should have, Chris Terrio, what you should have asked for from Zack Snyder and all of those guys is, let me write this script from the start. That's what you should have asked for. You should have never used the structure of David Goya's script, which clearly was trash, and tried to add some great character moments and some more sophisticated, you know, lines and conflict over that, because basically, you know, and political and philosophical ideas. That's basically what he did. He took a trash foundation and put some politics, some clever philosophical lines, you know, a little bit more of a sophisticated interpretation of Batman, where he's a little bit more James Bond than he usually is, and you know, that things of that nature, you know. But the basic structure of the script and the structure of that conflict was so problematic, it couldn't save the movie from being hated by at least half the audience. And that's the problem with Zack Snyder movies. They're hated by half the audience, and he does it to himself because he won't toe the line with not using deconstructionist versions of these characters. So what was your relationship with Zack? Good. I have nothing whatsoever bad to say about Zack. He has a skill set that I don't have as a visualist, and he has a contagious excitement that when you describe a scene, he almost can't contain himself, and he just wants to go draw it or paint it. Zack never for a second turned his back on me or doubted my work. After Batman Superman, many of my Hollywood friends just stopped talking to me because they sort of thought that somehow I was complicit in this very public failure of a studio film. How can your friends stop talking to you because you wrote a bad film? Mate, they weren't your friends. Many of my Hollywood friends just stopped talking to me because of it. What is he? Is he for real? What kind of friend is that? You just say many of the people you knew in Hollywood, bro, they're not your friends. That's sick, bro. Because of a film, they don't talk to you. You learn pretty quickly who your real friends. You didn't murder someone. Do you know what I mean? You weren't accused of murder or like something terrible. There was just a film that came out which, you know, audiences were divided on. Why is he talking like this? You learn quickly who your friends are and who your air kiss Hollywood friends are. Zack could not have been more supportive and never stopped believing that together we were going to create this big epic DC world. And I think eventually, if they learn to play to both of their strengths, because he is a good writer, Chris Terrio, he really is. I can see elements of that in the movie, and I can see a lot of it in Justice League. He's a great writer. I don't know why people hate Chris Terrio so much as a writer himself. I think he's very good, and I think Justice League, he should be very, very proud of what he did in Justice League. Yeah, there are a few tweaks here and there that would have made it a lot better, but you know, for the most part, it's a very personal and human and humane movie. And I do think that I really wish he was around. Again, I wish he was another writer around. I'd like him to take a swing at Wonder Woman, the third Wonder Woman film, because he does his research, he reads the comics, he knows, you know, he doesn't just come in there and, you know, not do his research, which I like about him as a writer. I remember him talking in an interview a long time ago about all the comics he'd been reading, and I think he would have crafted some good scripts. But again, you know, the Warner Brothers are just throwing him away. And I want to talk about Warner Brothers 1 second, during all of this. Yeah, too much story in BvS. You're right. The guy at the beginning of BvS who was holding Lois. Yeah, exactly. Movie logic says the main terrorist walked away without a scratch. Right. I don't believe that for a second. He didn't. And yeah, too much story in BvS. There is way too much story. But I think beyond that, I think the problem with BvS is the conflict between Batman and Superman is just not believable. I don't believe why they're fighting. And I don't think people, when they think of a Batman v Superman fight, I don't think that's how they want to imagine it. I think they want to see Superman really coming at Batman, like at least if he's not, if he's not like 30%, at least come at, you want to at least come at, Superman should be coming at Batman at least, a good 50%. Like he's using his heat vision, he's using his freeze breath, he's using various powers, and Batman is trying to maneuver around that. And if Superman isn't doing that, then it's not really a Batman versus Superman fight, because it's Superman's basically throwing the fight up until Batman is able to, give him kryptonite, which was so obvious. We all knew. Like we were hoping that maybe they'd figure out another way for Batman to actually do something to Superman, and they didn't. They went the obvious route of kryptonite, and it was boring. So I do want to talk about Warner Brothers at the moment, and I think again, Warner Brothers really needs to work on managing their talent and using their talent where they're good. And using their talent for I don't know why they didn't get someone like Chris Terrio to help write Wonder Woman 1984, for instance. I don't understand why they wouldn't have approached someone like him to do that. This is a big, massive movie, or somebody else, like a great writer, to do something like that. Rather than Patty Jenkins. They mismanage their talent at every fucking level. And I think that's the biggest thing, because the problem is when you mismanage talent isn't going to want to work with you, and they're not going to want to work on these DC movies. And that's going to be a shame. And us DC fans are going to suffer for that a lot, I think. We're going to see that in future. As DC's movies become dumber and dumber and dumber. And Justice League, whoever's responsible, both Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio for Justice League, you do not want to get rid of people like that. And I think, yeah, there's some toxic fans, and there's the Snyderverse fans. What are you going to do? You're always going to have people, but who aren't who do things and act off emotion and don't act off reason. But in the end, when it all comes down to it, it's about making the money. And these guys, I think, can make the money. How did you feel when that journey ended prematurely with Justice League's upheaval? I went into such a depression when the film was taken away and rewritten, but I didn't even feel entitled to be depressed, because Zach and Debbie, his wife and co-producer, were dealing with their family tragedy. Measured against that, losing this film that you wrote seems like nothing at all, but it did hurt. It hurt to think that I cared so much about these characters and worked on nothing else for a very long time. Wow, see, he does care about the characters. Do you feel like the title and the cuts for length made it harder for people to appreciate things that did work in Batman v Superman? That's exactly right. The audience has to know that they're in good hands. The minute that you lose them from a story point of view, they lose the desire to look at it generously. Once the critics decide a movie is incoherent, it's just a pylon, and that is true. That's very, very true. There's a big pylon. I saw people praising Batman v Superman at first, and then the critics' reviews came out, and then they started changing their mind on the movie. Then they attack everything. There's a line at the beginning of the film where a warlord says to Lois Lane, "They didn't tell me the interview was with a lady." And Lois replies, "I'm not a lady, I'm a journalist." So one reviewer, I noticed this as well. I thought, what? That's a perfectly fine line. So one reviewer held up this line as proof positive of my stupidity and my inability to write Lois or to write at all. It was a perfectly fine line. I'm not a lady, I'm a journalist. Well, the character of Lois in the movie was inspired by the journalist Mary Colvin, who was, of course, killed in Syria. She was one of the most intrepid journalists who ever lived, in my opinion. And there's a story in Vanity Fair, Mary Colvin's Private War, by Mary Brenner. And in the line that Lois says is almost exactly the line that was in that article where a Chechen warlord said he wouldn't shake her hand because she was a woman. And Mary Colvin replied, "There is no woman in this room, only a journalist." Right. Okay. So he was taking a line from her. I'm not, and he says, "I'm not a lady." And I liked that line. I thought that was very spunky of Lois, you know. And what she meant is, I'm not a dainty lady. I'm a journalist. I'm a serious person. I'm not like what your stereotype or imagination of a lady is. So that was a good line, and I'm glad he brought that out, because I think I even read that review. And it was so bullshit. I was like, what? This is just a complete, what kind of idiot critic says that? So that line was my tribute to her. But then in the pylon, a line like that is held as proof positive that I don't understand either women or journalists or human beings, and that I'm a shitty writer. Yeah. I think that he made a very, very good point there. So, like, you feel you lost people before they even saw it. That was the climate in which the film dropped. Anything and everything was attacked because the reviewers questioned, because the reviewers weren't being objective. They knew that if they put a bad review out and they kept attacking every single thing, everything was stupid, that they could easily that people would click on their videos, people would click on their articles, people would click on this. When I criticize a movie, I criticize not only for what it's trying to be. So if you've heard what I've been criticizing it so far is, I've said the conflict between Batman and Superman didn't work, and I've said the things that didn't work. But I've criticized it very constructively. A lot of the critics were just saying it's dark. It's there was no argument there. It was just like, it's dark, it's gloomy, it's this, it's that, without any reason saying why that makes the film bad, or why that means that the filmmaker didn't achieve what they were trying to achieve, because clearly the film was meant to be dark. So why would you criticize it for being dark? You only criticize a movie for being too dark if the filmmaker was trying to make a light-hearted children's movie or something like that. And then you go, oh, wait a second, this is too dark because this is a children's movie. You always have to say, because of something, because of this reason, that is why I believe this, X. If you aren't saying that, then you're not really criticizing, you're just making statements. And I do find a lot of the criticisms on Rotten Tomatoes are like that, and it's got to stop. It really has to stop, because these people, as they say, they do work hard and they deserve something better. And to call a man an idiot for saying a line that, so are you trying to say, when this critic said that the line was stupid, and that and I read this somewhere, I remember reading this somewhere about Lois saying, "I'm not a lady, I'm a journalist." And when this critic said that he was an idiot and he doesn't know men and he doesn't know human beings and he doesn't know women because he'd written this line, was he also calling Amy Adams an idiot for saying that line? Because Amy Adams said the line. Wouldn't Amy Adams, I think she's strong-minded enough to be able to say, you know what, Chris Terrio, maybe say it a different way, because I think this is going to be super offensive to women. He didn't. She didn't, because it wouldn't be. It's only super offensive to woke Hollywood critics who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Anyway, so let's go on. I don't blame them. The marketing promised this mindless fight movie, and any attempt to make something real or complicated was just met with anger and vitriol because the audience just didn't assume good intentions. I can kind of agree with that, but I think there's problems with the movie as well with your depiction of Superman. It's basically it. Your depiction of Superman and Batman killing, I think that put the fans off. Critics, they're just idiots. They were saying the same thing they said about this movie. They were saying about Joker, the Joker as well, which went on to win Oscars and be nominated for Oscars. They're just idiots. Anyway, I've been working with the director to bring a voice of conscience and sanity to the almost. I mean, these critics rated Justice League, the 2017 version, over Batman v Superman. That's how moronic these some of these critics are. They gave it 40% and Batman v Superman 25%. So I've been working with the director to bring a voice of conscience and sanity to the almost perversely dark film you've been developing for years, but I'm the problem here. Another complaint was that Zack Snyder's DC films were too grim and heavy. Did you feel blamed for that? The studio seemed to take the position that after BvS that my writing was too dark and this was their problem. But what they didn't mention was that, for example, in the draft of Batman Superman script that WB had developed, which was the draft I was handed when I joined the project, Batman was not only branding criminals with a bat brand, he also ended the movie branding Lex Luthor, which he shouldn't have been branding criminals or Lex Luthor. The ending was a point over which I explicitly went to the mat with the studio again and again. I argued that Batman could not end the movie continuing this behavior, which amounted to torture, because then the movie was endorsing what he did. And he shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. That is why Superman should never work with this fucking crazy asshole who kills people who are just couriers for a company. Anyway, do me a favor. If you're watching this, please, and you're enjoying the content, please give me a high five, smash that like button as we continue discussing this for, let me see if I've got, how long I've got left. I think I'm going to go on for another 10 minutes here. So what was your argument to them? It's one thing if Batman Begins, the movie, as a dark version of himself when we don't recognize, whom we don't recognize, but he has to see the error of his ways and remember his better self in the course of the movie. By the end of the movie, he needs to be the Batman we know, and he has to be ready to go and create the Justice League. Otherwise, I said, what's the point? But that Batman who killed people and murdered people like that can't stop the Justice League. He murdered in cold blood. I'll say one thing. Wow. I'll say one thing about I'm going to say one thing about BvS, right? One thing about Superman and Wonder Woman. Now, I've never been for Superman murdering, and I've never been for Wonder Woman murdering. And they both do. In Justice League, Wonder Woman murders people. In Wonder Woman 1, she kind of murders people, I think, but it's like really off screen, so you can't really tell. And it's during a war, so it's a war situation. So, but she doesn't really need to kill those people. But she's a warrior then. She's naive. She's just come out as Wonder Woman. So I guess, it's a little bit different in that sense. But she's killing people, and I don't like that. And then the same goes with Superman in the beginning of BvS, and of course, you know, the infamous neck snap. So in the beginning of BvS, we have, I believe it's this part.
Stand down order.
So I believe we have this part here, where Superman essentially just murders someone. And it's just like, is that really necessary? Was that really necessary as a scene? What was Zack Snyder trying to communicate in that scene? What was he trying to say about Superman? Why would he do that? But having said all that, these are justified homicides. These are justified murders because that's a terrorist threatening Lois Lane. It's in a foreign country. He's a terrorist about to murder Lois Lane. Wonder Woman, there's bank robbers, terrorists trying to kill children, or she's in a war. Superman, there's a guy who's trying to take over the world, kill everybody, mass genocide. He snaps his neck. Batman, in Batman v Superman, has absolutely no business killing the people he does or branding the people he does. He just has no business doing it. There are people literally, I've said it, they're taking, you know, for all he knows, all these people are up to, these people probably with families and children and etc. All the things that, you know, have made him the Batman because, you know, his family got killed in the street. There are people taking kryptonite to Lex Luthor. That's all they're doing. They're not the Joker. They're not, you know, Riddler or Scarecrow poisoning the city, trying to terrorizing Gotham. They are people taking kryptonite. And because he wants kryptonite off them, he's willing to murder them. The Justice League should have never worked with this madman. So that's my opinion on that. Did you feel you were able to significantly change the Africa scene with Superman for the better? I removed the punch of Lois for one thing. Just think about the optics of that. I was able to add material to the film and asked the movie to grapple with what that. So did he say something about the battle? So what else did you have pushback against? I'm the one who had them had been saying that when that we can't make a joke out of Superman raining hell upon black African Muslim characters in the desert, as Lois promises that Superman is not going to go easy on them because they punched her. But somehow I'm the person with the dark sensibility. I wanted to say, I've been saving you from yourselves. I've been working with the director to bring a voice of conscience and sanity to almost perversely dark film you've been developing for years. But I'm the problem here. Wow. So this is part of what I was saying before I even showed this part. I was agreeing with him. So he probably didn't want Superman to kill that black African Muslim guy. And I've always said this about the movie as well, that I just think it's ridiculous, this part of the movie. So yeah, he didn't want to kill the black African Muslim guy in the desert. Right. As Lois promises that Superman is going to go easy, or not going to go easy on them because they punched her. Right. And then I removed the punch of Lois for one thing, just to think about the optics of that. I was able to add material. I think the punch, but Lois punching one of them would have been fine. I think it's Superman killing people that was the problem. I was able to add material to the film and asked the movie to grapple with what that battle meant. I think that's really bad that he took Lois punching them out of it. Actually, why would Lois punching the guy be the problem? The problem is Superman coming in and burning and raining hell. And I don't think Superman is so out of control that just because somebody hit Lois and she punched them back, that he would then murder them. So that it didn't seem like a casual scene of Superman intervening in this way without reckoning with the consequences of intervention. I place that in context of a moral question. Superman says, think of what could have happened. And Lois says, think of what did. I don't know what you're talking about, mate. That African scene was an absolute fucking mess. He should have told them, don't kill fucking anybody. Superman doesn't kill anybody. He comes in, he saves fucking, he saves Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane. That's the only way that African scene should have played out. And the central conflict should have been about Superman and the paranoia about him destroying the city, and Batman investigating what exactly happened. So that consequence takes place in a fictional African country called Nairobi, and there's a manipulation happening with Lex Luthor and his American mercenaries trying to provoke conflict and frame Superman. After Superman rescues Lois, the film shows the people of that region truly suffering in the crossfire. Without sounding too political, it's not lost on me that much like a drone, Superman sort of comes from out of nowhere from the sky and vanquishes his enemies and then flies off with no consequences. That may not have been an angle on Superman that people wanted to see and wanted to think about. But wait a second, no, Superman doesn't do that, mate. That's not an angle that people don't want to think about. Superman doesn't do that in the comics. I don't know what you're talking about or where you got that interpretation of Superman from. Superman comes down and he tries to help people. He tries to, ensure that, I don't know, like a train doesn't go off its tracks, or, save a plane, or save, stuff like that. He doesn't come down, missile his enemies. Where did you get this interpretation from? How can you possibly come in and think about that? If he fights anyone, it's usually aliens or Brainiac or something like that. That's not like a fucking drone. It's usually when Superman's fighting someone, it's up against somebody who's usually probably more powerful or way smarter than he is, and he has a hard time with it. So that's a strange interpretation. Now I'm starting to see maybe it wasn't Zack Snyder and it was actually both of them who was thinking of Superman in this way. What a bizarre description of Superman. That may not have been an angle on Superman that people wanted to see and wanted to think about. Superman never does that. If he's fighting a human, he just gets rid of them quite easily. He fights aliens. He saves people. He's a fireman. He's the super fireman. I don't know. Anyway, did you also add the scene with the character Kahini Ziri, who was a witness to the battle, testifying about the aftermath in Washington, D.C. Ultimately, we learned she was coerced by Luthor, but her testimony does make the audience and Clark Kent himself reevaluate his actions and how he operates. Yeah, that was added afterwards. I added that scene. He came down and then came fire. The story that she tells, at least in the script, is that he destabilized the entire region and then government forces came in and slaughtered the village. Since these were the optics they already were already in the movie, I thought that my job was to ask questions and say, what do we add? Why was that in the movie? I don't know. I like the certain elements of that, but I just think the whole thing with with Superman destroying Metropolis could have been focused enough, and they could have just used that as a scene for Superman to save some people. I don't know. I guess they needed Lex Luthor to be doing some kind of plan. You're pushing back against some of these scenes, and you're saying that the studio wanted these things, but you also had to convince Zach, right? So was Zach open to these kinds of criticism? When I would talk to Zach about some of these things, I think he got it. We discovered that we were on the same page, and that he loved the idea of a scene in Congress with the African woman describing the consequences in the village. He right away sparked to that and got excited about casting that character with actor Wumi Mosaku, now known for the Lovecraft Country, and thought she could be a very important character for the movie. So Zach was quite open to all this stuff, and I thought the studio was too. Why weren't they? Later, when I realized that so much of the plot was going to be cut out, I began to think, well, they didn't really want this kind of story. The last things to get cut out always are the stunt scenes and the special effects scenes because they cost so much. By the time they're all there in the assembly, enormous amounts of money have been spent on every frame. So when you're looking to cut time, the things that get cut tend to be the big effect sequences or the fights or the stunt sequences. The things that get cut are the nuance. Yeah. So yeah, the scenes that actually give meaning to the bigger action sequences, I think that's the problem. Not only with this film, but I suppose with all tentpoles. Given the concerns about BvS's structure you inherited, why did you sign on to the Justice League? I agreed to write the Justice League because I wanted the chance to write these characters with love and hope after getting through the darkness of Batman v Superman. The end of my version of Batman v Superman includes Bruce seeing the error of his ways and promising to change. It's the return of conscience after the ethical nightmare. And in Justice League, Bruce does do better. See, you jumped the gun there, mate. You jumped the gun. You should have introduced a good Batman and then and sorted out Superman from Man of Steel. And then you could have gone into a darkness world after Justice League. You can't go into that straight away. You can't assume that you need to make people like the characters before you make them dislike. Because most people dislike deconstructions. We don't like deconstructions of people. You don't want a mopey, depressed Superman. You're not going to warm to that kind of character. But anyway, look, I think this is a good place to cut it because it seems like we're transitioning here from Chris Terrio's discussion of Batman v Superman to more of his discussion on Justice League. So I want to thank you for staying with me here. Thanks so much. Have you seen the first episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier? I have indeed. I've got a review of it on another channel, but thanks very much. I want you to do me a favor. If you could give me a high five, smash that like button, and do subscribe for more content. And of course, I'll see you on the flip side. And I love you 3000. Peace.